I will gladly be welcoming our next panelist, Katie Rothenberg, who's been executing sustainability initiatives in the built environment for nearly 15 years. As Vice President of Sustainability, she is responsible for leading and maturing the Tower Company's industry-leading sustainability and renewables programs. This work spans across a 6 million square foot owned and managed portfolio of residential and commercial office space. So thanks so much, Katie. You can go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Hannah. And certainly welcome everybody. I know that we're super excited to be sharing a little bit about our solar program today in the hopes that that can help inform, opportunities for you all within your portfolio. So next slide. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, I think it's important to sort of understand who Tower is, because obviously our structure informs the way we do things as it relates to solar. So we are a family-owned and privately held real estate company. We're actually celebrating our 75th year this year, which is exciting. We're locally focused, so our portfolio is all based in the DC metro area, some in DC proper, some in neighboring Montgomery County, Maryland, which is really right over the DC line. And we're vertically integrated. So we develop, own, and manage, which of course, as a sustainability person is sort of a dream, because we've got, I have the ability, and we have the ability to control all elements really of the life cycle of the building. So as Hannah said, we've got about a 6 million square foot portfolio, mostly office and residential, but we do have some retail. And we also have about 13 million square feet in the development pipeline. To the right here, you see a quote, which you don't see this very often. This is actually part of Tower's mission statement. So think about that for a second. I work for a company where we are envisioning a world where buildings inspire and enrich the lives of their occupants and help sustain the environment. So I think it says a little bit about how we've used sustainability, whether it's renewables and solar or net zero, et cetera, to drive value for the firm as far as reputation, right? Just as Brenna was talking about. So next slide. We've been at this a long time from a green building perspective, very early adopters of many of the third-party certifications that are out there, and longtime partners of the Better Buildings Challenge with DOE, and have always really felt like we have an opportunity to, because we're small, because we can be nimble and don't have outside investors, we have the ability to try and do different things, and really always want to share our experience with others in the hope that that helps inform or make for a better outcome. So we've been carbon neutral since 2010, and we do that by purchasing offsets, renewable energy credits and carbon offsets for 100% of our greenhouse gas emissions. We've been doing that since 2010. And that's actually separate from our on-site solar, which we can get into in the Q&A if that's of interest. So next slide. So here we are, a little bit about our solar program. And I hope if there's one thing you take away from this slide, it's that it comes in all shapes and sizes. So to the left, you see our first solar installation, which was actually at 1909 K Street in Washington, DC. It was the first solar installation on a multi-tenant office building in DC. And then you see our most current, which is the carport solar project picture you see there in the center, which we actually flipped the switch on today, which is exciting. It's about a 0.5 megawatt hour sized system. But again, we've got small systems, we got larger systems. We've got, we've put solar on, 1960s vintage buildings, rooftops. We've also put it on buildings that were developed in the last few years. So again, our experience, I think, runs the gamut. Next slide. So again, a little bit more detail sort of by the numbers. We have 5 solar projects that have been completed to date, and have another 3 that are slated to be completed here over the next couple of months. And with that completion, we're expecting that 5% of Tower's total annual electricity demand will actually come from the sun. So about 4,000 panels, majority of which are American made. We're doing it again on both our residential and office portfolio, which we can talk a little bit about as we go further. And then also for those, there was lots of questions about payback and financing and, how do you make the numbers work, et cetera. Those 5 solar projects that are completed, they all have case studies written about them, some by DOE, some by other partners. And so the links there in blue will give you a little bit more information about our process and how we were able to make the case. So next slide. So let's talk about ownership model. As Brenna said, there's a whole lot of ways you can go about financing or not financing, in our case, your solar installations. So once we had a detailed analysis, a preliminary design for our first solar project, we dug way into the details to understand the pro forma, right? And understand the payback. Now, remember, we are a family-owned, privately held real estate company. So we are holding these assets for a very long time, which means that we have the flexibility to make decisions about paybacks. We're not, we can take a 5-year payback, right? Which is most all of our projects have really come in at a 5-year payback or less, some as low as 1 year. But we worked very closely with, the tax team, especially, accounting, engineering, to understand, what do the numbers look like? And what we found was that a direct purchase was going to be the best way for us to go financially, which isn't the case for everyone. But a lot of that is because of our structure, because we are privately held, because we're holding these assets for very long periods of time, we get to take advantage of all really of the short and long-term incentives that are out there. So the federal investment tax credit and accelerated depreciation, those drive a lot of the financial case for us because of the way, privately held real estate companies are structured. So the ability to take down your tax burden is a big deal. But we've also taken full advantage of rebates, both from Maryland, from others. And then we also have made the decision to sell our solar renewable energy credits. So that was another way to bring in some cash flow to help make the business case. And then as a reminder, we've set this up as sort of a behind the meter system. So this is net metering. So the electrons from our solar panels that are on the roof of our residential building are flowing to our building first before we're then drawing electricity from the grid. So if you go to the next slide, that really translates directly into electricity savings because our electrical demand has gone down, which of course, as real estate people, we know that that's increasing NOI. And when you're talking about that over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period, when you're capping that, there's real value there, certainly. Obviously, having lower cost per square foot for operating costs, there's certainly value for that as you're leasing office space to tenants. That's a question that's obviously being readily asked. And understanding the lease structure and how that's going to impact, who gets the benefit is important. In the DC market, we're looking at modified gross leases. And so we found, based on our analysis, that we're getting the vast majority of the benefit of our efficiency measures, both sort of operational efficiency, but also the reduced electricity demand. Residential, of course, the savings are, again, coming directly to us as the owner. And, before I close, I think I want to remind folks that there's a lot of value in sort of translating these savings and translating these programs into a story. When you're talking to an office tenant and you say, we've got on-site solar that, is attributed to, 1% of electricity demand, like it goes right over their head. It doesn't mean anything. So think about how to make these numbers make sense to folks, So, our solar panels are able to power our elevators for a year, or it's able to power, hot water heaters or whatever. It helps make it a little bit more tangible for folks. And next slide, I would say on the last piece of that is on the residential side, there's also sort of this more qualitative element of values alignment. We've branded our Blair's residential district, which is about 27 acres in Silver Spring, Maryland, as really an environmentally eco-conscious community. And so having on-site solar aligns very well with our green roofs and aligns with our, farming plots and our CSA access, and the fact that we're buying renewable, wind power to offset all of our GHG emissions. All of that weaves together into a story, which when you're trying to differentiate yourself in a tough market, every bit helps. So I think that the value proposition is not only on the, NOI, tax savings, quick payback, et cetera, but it's also on these maybe the softer side, again, depending on what sector you're working in.